Now, Steve, we mentioned in the introduction nearly 20 years in volunteering. You are definitely motivated. So what got you motivated into Arlington's Remove Invasive Plants program, or in other words, the RIP program?
Yes. Well, the reason that many of these plants became invasive was because they got here without their natural enemies from their home continents. And so without natural enemies, if the climate was right, they could spread very aggressively. What I began to see in my local park, Daniel, was that English ivy seemed to be taking over everything. It was carpeting the ground, it was climbing up the trees, and the park was beginning to seem like nothing but this ivy stuff. So it started to bother me, and I started to kind of mutter to myself, somebody ought to do something about that, thinking, well, the county ought to hire people to clean this up. But one day, walking in the park, I saw that the English ivy had grown over a park bench that was on my regular route that I walked. The bench had disappeared. The ivy had completely smothered or grown over the bench, so you couldn't even see the bench anymore. And that was the day that something kind of snapped, and I thought, this is just not right. And I actually pulled one vine off the bench, and it felt kind of good to pull that vine up. And so I pulled another one, and in a couple minutes, the bench was clear again. And I realized, you know, this feels kind of good, pulling up this stuff. I know this stuff is bad, and I began to pull more of it, and then I could see areas that had been cleared that, that looked different. And I realized this is making things better.
And so why should others care? Why should others volunteer? And how can they solve this problem?
A lot of it has to do, Daniel, with nature as sort of our real nature, being local. Like a lot of people have heard about the idea of eating local, that's a good thing, food that was grown nearby. To think in terms of what plants are local that would naturally be in this area, and wouldn't it be nice to encourage the things that should be here? A lot of people who care about wildlife, birds, for example, the birds can't get much food when an area has a lot of invasives because there are fewer insects that provide food for the young birds in areas that have really been taken over. So
the next pictures that we have, one is a before and after image of a removal of these invasive plants. Now that's the before photo of the Long Branch Nature Center. And then we have the after photo. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
And what you can see with these pictures, Daniel, in the before, it actually looked kind of like the impenetrable jungle. And some people might think that's natural for our area, but actually in our area, the woodlands are naturally kind of open woodlands that are kind of pleasant to walk around in and explore, whereas when the invasives take over, they're very hard to get in. Ironically, another issue is when English ivy is carpeting an area, rats actually like that. And so people are inadvertently creating ideal rat habitat when they have their yard completely overgrown with English ivy. The rats feel very safe hiding under that ivy. So we can make these areas cleaner, more natural, healthier, better for the wildlife, better for people to enjoy.
Now, if a homeowner does find an English ivy on their property, how can they remove it?
It turns out that much of the time, English ivy can be pulled up pretty easily.
As we have some footage here, yes.
These vines are small vines, but when vines are larger, that's my favorite tool, a handsaw.
Yes.
You can cut the vines with something like a handsaw or clippers. So here, I'm clearing ivy away from a mature tree that could have been killed by the ivy if the ivy had been left alone to continue to grow on that tree. And we're also seeing there actually were some native ferns, Christmas ferns, at the base of this tree that were saved by getting the ivy out of there.
Right. Now, quickly, what native plant alternatives do homeowners have? Now, we have some photos here. The first one is the arrowwood viburnum.
Yes.
So hopefully you can, if you can, talk a little bit about it.
The viburnum, it is native. It grows here naturally. You can see the berries. That's a good food for birds. Also, insects can feed on the viburnum, and those insects will be food for birds and other animals. And it's actually a pretty plant, even if it is native. So this is a good one that's fairly easy to grow and beneficial.
Now, the second photo that we have is the fringe tree. The fringe tree, if we can show that up, yes?
And that's one of my favorites. Those are the flowers of the fringe tree, and they look kind of fringy, as you can see. They also have a very beautiful scent, and so it's an attractive plant. It is native to this general area, fairly easy to grow, and not that many people know about it, but if you know it, you'll like it.
The next photo is Hearts A-Bursting.
And another favorite of mine, it's called Hearts A-Bursting because the fruit capsule, which we see here, in the late fall, it has some really beautiful colors, and it looks like a capsule, sort of like a heart that burst open, the settlers thought when they gave it that name. This is also called Euonymus americanus, is the scientific name, so it's an American plant.
Next photo, the trumpet honeysuckle.
And this is a honeysuckle that is native and also a very attractive plant. Hummingbirds love this plant. They're very attracted to the honeysuckle flowers. So, good native example.
And our last photo is finally the Virginia creeper. If you can show a photo of that, please. And you can describe it a little bit.
And the Virginia creeper is well known for its fall colors. It gets some really attractive colors in the fall. It's an easy grower. And so people find that it can be a good alternative to English ivy as a ground cover. Now, some people do feel that it's aggressive, so that can be a concern for some people.
Okay, and how can homeowners be certain that the plants that they do buy are not invasive?
That's a really good question. I recommend that you research. Look for a nursery that specializes in native plants and do some research. There are lists of plants that have been found to be invasive. Avoid those. Go for nurseries. Look at the labels and go after natives when you can.
And a little bit of information about your blog. Maybe you can share that to some of our viewers.
Sure. I have been blogging for almost 4 years now, and so plantwhacker.blogspot.com is my blog. Some of the pictures that we just saw come out of there, and I put pictures and I talk about what I'm doing.
Great. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being here today. It was a great discussion, and I think it really does inform people here in Arlington and in our area in general. Steve, thank you very much. Now, before we do leave, we are going to have a scroll of some information where you can contact Steve and get some more information about invasive plants. I'm Daniel Pineda reporting. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Dana.